Blindfolded and Led to the Woods released one of the finest death metal records of the year so far and featured in episode number 33 of the Scream Blast Repeat Album of the Week. Chief songwriter and guitar virtuoso Stuart Henley-Minchington joins Kirk Horton for a track-by-track analysis of the band's latest record, Rejecting Obliteration. This is an SBR exclusive interview. So the album was released on Prosthetic Records on the 19th of May this year, and it's called Rejecting Obliteration. And track number 1, Monolith. I'll just give you briefly my thoughts, and then let's discuss this song in more detail. So what surprised me about this straight away from the first notes, you've got the dissonance, and then you've already got some subtle melodies. And the drums, they're not playing blast beats, they're not playing skank beats. They're all over the place. It's really high tempo. And then there's some really weird metallic chugging in there as well. And the vocals, fucking hell, the vocals are terrifying on this song, aren't they? They really are.
Stace is he's a madman. He done an awesome job on this album.
He looks the part as well. How tall is this guy? Is he 6'4" or something? He looks huge in the band.
Yeah, I think he's about 6'4", I think. Yeah, he's tall.
He just dwarfs everyone in the band pictures. He looks like he's shooting an All Black, in the rugby union team.
Tell us he's going to love that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'm going to interview him for my other channel. Tell us about this song then, how it came into being, what it means to you, and what you were trying to achieve with it.
So this was actually one of the first songs that I wrote for Rejecting Obliteration. And I've just been toying around with a couple of little ideas. I actually work in a music store day to day, so I always have a bunch of 7 strings on hand. So I'm always tinkering with ideas, but often when it comes to writing music, I'll kind of most of our songs I'll write in sort of a 24-hour period, because I don't want to kind of like what we were saying before, I don't want to dwell on anything for too long. It's kind of this is how this song pans out, and it just kind of snowballs till I've finished writing it. So yeah, as I said, it's one of the first songs that I wrote, and yeah, it just kind of wrote itself. And it was kind of after Nightmare with Jules, it was where do we go from here? Where do I begin writing the next stuff? So yeah, once the song was written, I kind of had a little bit of an idea of the direction of where this whole album was going to go. Because I think if you listen to that track, there's kind of a snapshot of everything you'll hear on the album. There's kind of the dissonant riffs. There's some clean stuff. There's a random weird guitar solo. There's some super heavy stuff near the end. There's some sort of more traditional tech death sort of riffing. So it kind of had a little bit of everything. And yeah, it was one of the first songs that we came together in the band room to learn. So yeah, I think it's a bit of an odd opener for the album, because I think that Rejecting Obliteration with Inevitable Fate of the Universe as the opener was such a pummeling, relentless track, where the song's a little bit more laid back in a way, I guess. So it kind of where Nightmare with Jules just came out and punched you in the head straight away, this album kind of it's got a bit more of a build in the first half, I think. So yeah. And yeah.
To me, there's do you know what I love about this as well? There's an intro. The outro reminds me of Meshuggah when they're at the most experimental. There's some really interesting swerves, in the rhythm and the groove. Yeah, you're right. There is a definite luscious, almost shoegaze texture in this song as well, isn't there? But you're inserting it amongst this vicious noise spectrum as well. I just think it's what I love about it. It's just sending out so many different emotions that inevitably, maybe this is what you intended, you just end up being scooped up in it and you don't really know what's going on.
I think I guess that's just kind of like what has ended up being my writing style, you know. When you write a lot of music, you start to sort of define, I guess, who you are and like what your sound is. So I just kind of follow my nose when it comes to this stuff and just trust in the process a little bit. But yeah, I think yeah.
Let's move on to Bethlehem. To me, best song on the album. I love this song, but I think this is anyone who listens to progressive death metal or tech death, they are going to be in heaven listening to this song on it. Let's be honest, that intro, the guitar work, you're doing this really fast shredding. Do you know, this is one of those times when music is so heavy it makes you laugh. This was one of those times. It reminded me of being 19 when I first heard Dillinger Escape Plan. And me and my friends, this was 99, and we were laughing at it. We're like, this is fucking insane. And this did the same. And do you know what it is? It's when you've got that really fast riff at the beginning, and then you think the drums are going to come in time. And then they just do these really, I think they're almost like blast beats, and your guitars deliberately miss a line from it as well. It's like, Jesus Christ. I had to like take my headphones off and press it back to the beginning because I just found it so heavy and crushing, but at the same time, it's mind-boggling. So I know lyrically this is really an attack on not religious fanaticism. This is an attack on perhaps religion. I think, are you using the metaphor that you can be addicted to it and you can lose sight of what it means and you have no spirituality? Is that where you're coming from a lyrical point of view on this song?
I think that's a pretty good way to sum it up. This is actually one of the lyrical tracks that Stace wrote. So we probably wrote about half and half lyrically on this album. And yeah, I think like from what we've seen in our lifetime from religion, less than impressed, you know. And I guess, yeah, it was interesting because when we actually released the video clip of that album, there was like a massive amount of child abuse cases that came out of the church on like the same week. And we were just like, fuck, like, this is exactly the shit we're talking about, you know? And it was, yeah, it was a bit strange to see, but, yeah, it'll be a good question for Stace when you do interview him for this one. But yeah, I love his lyrics and I love the kind of like venomous like hatred there is in Bethlehem, and his like vocal delivery is just like, you know, it's not like typical death metal vocals where it's kind of like that low register growl and stuff. I mean, he does do that, but I love the intensity. It's almost like hardcore. But when you're in the room with him, like recording vocals, it's just like, Jesus Christ. It's like this mammoth man, and he's just like, you know, sometimes just yelling at the top of his lungs. And it's just like, fuck. But yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, Bethlehem, I think this is probably maybe like the fourth or fifth song I wrote for the album. And I had kind of been like, oh yeah, like every song has got like quite a lot of like progressive stuff going on. And I was like, I just need to write a song that fucking doesn't have any of that. I just need to write the fucking heavy song. And that's what came out. But interestingly enough, like the outro of that album, it has that like huge synth rise that like comes out over that sort of breakdown riff. That was something that happened like totally off the cuff from our producer, Sam Sproul in Melbourne. So he's like a massive synth guy, loves like modular synth and all that stuff that I totally don't understand. And he, yeah, like I can't remember exactly how it played out, but we're sending like mixes back and forth. And he's like, you always get excited when he has like an idea where he's like, you know, this is a little bit like left field, you know, see what you guys think. And then it's something like that, and you're just like, fuck yeah, dude. Sick. So it's awesome having him as a producer because he did really become like a sixth member of the band. And and helped us take everything to the next level. Like all the synth stuff and that you hear across the album, like I had written a bit of synth throughout the songs when I was writing them, but he really just took that and like ran with it. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I think if you've not heard this song and you're watching this interview, you said you just wanted it to be a straight up Blindfolded and Led to the Woods song. There are so many parts in 3 minutes. Yeah, this is just mayhem, isn't it? So if you're telling me that you sometimes grab a 7-string guitar when you're in when you're in the music shop, can you write something like this in 24 hours? How's this even possible?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I just get on a roll and it's just like riff after riff, and I just start sort of giggling to myself because I'm like, oh, if it goes there, like it's fucking it's pretty out of it. And then you start sort of piecing it together. But yeah, I don't like to, like I say, I don't like to think about it too much. It's just kind of like, this is what's coming out. Like, does it work? Does it not work? Sometimes if it doesn't work, I'm like, that's cool too. Like, yeah, don't want to be too hung up on it. But yeah, I one riff in that song that I really like is the kind of black metal, when it just sort of drops into that blast beat, and it's got that kind of like, I don't know how you'd describe it. I call it like a tornado riff, where it's just kind of like,
yeah.
And it's just like just picking as fast as you can. It's like, yeah, playing that song live is fucking fun.
Yeah, there's the opening riffs, that sting of the bumblebee technique, isn't it? You know, neoclassical is like really fast. That's the one that gets me. I just love that element of it. So let's move on then to this. This is a remarkable song. Track number 3, Hallucinative Terror. And that the intro to this really got me. It really did pull on the heartstrings almost. You know, you've got this clean delay effect guitar. Is that a synth or is that a saxophone in the background that's blended into the melody at the beginning? I'm sure I can hear a saxophone in here.
Yeah, it's actually trombone. So
Trombone.
Yeah, there's like 3 trombone lines that are going simultaneously there. A friend of mine, Andy, phenomenal trombone player. We just brought him into the studio when we were recording vocals, because that section there didn't have like it didn't have anything over the top. It was just like the clean guitars. And I always knew, I was like when we come to recording the album, we'll do something with this part, and I don't know what it'll be, but we'll like figure it out on the fly. And yeah, I was talking to Andy one day, and we just brought him into the studio, and we were like, right, let's just flesh some shit out and see what happens. And I think within about 20 minutes we had the takes, and it was just like, that's it. That's fucking cool. The trombone fits perfectly. Yeah, he's just one of those guys that can pick up an instrument and listen to a part and kind of know the vibe. Yeah, phenomenal musician.
Yeah, this is the first song where I understood how much. I don't think you have changed your sound. You've just evolved. It feels natural. See, even a lot of people would see this as a risk. I don't. I think because it's so mellifluous, the way that you're doing it, it didn't even occur to me at the time that this was a risk in terms of what you're doing with the music. I think that's a testament just to the coherence of it, of how everything comes together and the textures that you're using. I mean, the middle parts of this are absolutely brutal, though, aren't they? Like, it's easy to forget that. And then the outro, luscious. Really, did you play this on the tour, your recent tour in Australia? Did you play this song?
Yeah, we've been playing this live. So yeah, this is one of those tracks. It's quite good live because it sort of breaks up the set a little bit, gives people a little bit of time to breathe. Because it's funny, at like a Blindfolded gig, like we have the weirdest mosh pits because the tempos and stuff are always changing. So it's like people are like, you know, one riff won't go for very long. So yeah, it's one of those tracks. Yeah, it kind of breaks it up. it's actually really cool to play live. I enjoy playing the song live, and the guitar solo at the end. I think like I think I kind of mentioned it in the written thing we did, but I think a lot of like tech death would have used a moment like that to just do like an insane sweep picking, like crazy intense guitar solo, but it like just totally didn't suit the vibe, you know. It was like, this is just like one of those like drawn out like ethereal parts that just needs to kind of, I just wanted like long drawn out notes, and I wanted every single note to be like the perfect follow up from the previous. I I like some of the really like emotive guitar solos that Billy Corgan in Smashing Pumpkins does sometimes. So I guess maybe a little bit inspired by that sort of vibe. Yeah. And a heavy, so like, yeah, when you talk about it like being a risk, maybe I can see why people would think that as well. But I've always thought like heavy music isn't always necessarily heavy. It can just be like heavy, like it can be heavy emotionally, it can be heavy lyrically. So yeah, it doesn't have to be distorted guitar to be heavy.
Yeah,
And I think like given the lyrical content, and if you've seen the video clip for the track, it was kind of like, it was one of those songs that it just lends itself to existing like that, you know.
yeah. Before we talk about the lyrics, I'd just like to come in there. Smashing Pumpkins were my gateway band into heavy guitar music. So I love Billy Corgan's playing on Siamese Dream and Melancholy Infinite Sadness, and I love that door as well emotionally. And you're right, emotional music can be heavy. The Cure are my all-time favorite band. So even I normally listen, 98% of what I listen to is extreme metal, but you know, I love The Cure and Depeche Mode and bands like that. So Hallucinative Terror, what is this about then? Sorry, this song. What is the lyrical theme here?
So this really is a song that's kind of about suicide, I guess. When we were writing this album, we had one of our good friends take his own life. So songs like this, you know, they weren't like inspired by that, but it was like there was sort of a general feeling amongst our friend group and family of like, you know, we'd lost someone, and it was tough times really at times of writing this. So I guess that just kind of like bled into the writing of a lot of the songs. And it's just one of those things. It just kind of wrote itself. And yeah.
Because I saw you put a post on Facebook this month, and I think another one of your close friends, unfortunately, it seems, has taken their life. Is that correct? Yeah. So
that is correct. Yeah.
Really, really sorry to hear that. So it got me thinking. I've done a bit of research actually, and before I go through this, we need to remember, don't we? These are individual people. They've got lives. We don't want them to be statistics. But there's a feeling, isn't there, in New Zealand that the rate of male suicide does seem to be a lot higher, certainly than Western Europe. So I was looking at the New Zealand mental health statistics published by your government, and overall, the rate of suicide does seem to be going down, but it's still very high. So in 2018, it was 12.7 suicides per 100,000 people. Now, just put it in perspective, in the UK, in England and Wales, that's 10. So yeah, there definitely is a problem there. And it seems to be, again, we don't want to be just talking about statistics, but it seems to affect men in a certain age group, and people of Maori origin seem to be overly represented in this as well. So then I had a quick look at the countries that have the highest suicide rates, and I was really shocked. A lot of these are in Africa. So number one was the country of Lesotho, or Lesotho, how some people might call it, 72.4 suicides per 100,000. That is shocking. And but let's go back to, you know, it's an individual thing, isn't it? We're remembering here. It doesn't matter where they are in these statistics. You've lost 2 people. And now I understand what you're saying when you said certain parts of this music had to serve that emotion. You couldn't just do this intense gore guts tech death for 10 songs, could you? Because that wouldn't be faithful to the complexity of emotions. You and Stace co-wrote the lyrics to this album, didn't you? Did you actually sit down and say, look, this is what we need? Is there a loose concept here to the lyrics?
I'm not sure if you'd say there's like a concept, because all of the songs do tackle like different subjects, but I think like the concept is kind of like, you know, the fact that where a lot of people are like suffering out there just to survive and just to get by. And when we talk about New Zealand in particular, you know, there really is like an epidemic of suicide here. It's like the worst in the Western world, you know. So it's something that has affected all of us, and it's not just affected us like during this album. Like we have been dealing with this our whole lives. Like this is not something of recent times. This, you know, we've had friends through high school, through our 20s, you know, it's been something that just happens. You know, you feel like it happens like every 6 months you get a message or a phone call that someone else is like taking their own life. So it's rough here. It's something that our government, I don't think, are like tackling as well as they should be. They tend to focus on easier things to fix than mental health. So and there's so many factors to it. It's not just you know, it's definitely not a simple thing to talk about. But yeah, it's one. This is a song. You know, when we made the video clip for it, we wanted to serve the song and the content and what's going on as well. So we put a lot of effort into making that video clip and kind of expressing the desperation that there is in the country. And it's not the first time that we've tried to sort of put ourselves out there and like help a little bit. Like Ben, the other guitarist, and I, a few years ago, we started like a non-profit event where we spent like 71 hours in the center of town, where we just like had an open space for people to come and talk and share about what's going on in their lives. We had like speakers and all that kind of stuff. And it was called Project 71. So the 71 related to the percentage of men that take their own lives in New Zealand. So like you say, it is like disproportionately male. It's rough, man. But yeah, it's one of those things, like, I mean, it affects us so much. It's always going to kind of have an effect on our lives, have an effect on our music. And this album just happened to pan out that every song was about very real stuff that was going on. And when we say like Stace and I co-wrote the lyrics, we didn't write any of these lyrics together. You know, we would just kind of present lyrics to each other. So there were songs that he wrote where I was kind of like, are you sure you want to sing this? Like it's very much like very real. And you know, a lot of people are going to listen to this. Do you want to put yourself out there like that? And we just kind of decided that, yeah, you know, we will. And yeah, this is Rejecting Obliteration is what's come out.
Yeah, no, do you know, it really has opened my eyes as well. Because I remember talking to you about the last album, and there was the trauma of the Christchurch terrorist attack, and there were a few natural disasters as well, weren't there, in Christchurch? Earthquakes, wasn't it? Yeah. So I mean, that was certainly something that you got caught up in, didn't you, when you were writing that album? I mean, I think what really disturbs me about the stats for New Zealand is that the Organization for Economic and Cooperative Development, the 41 countries that are in that, mainly rich Western countries, aren't they? New Zealand, as in 2016, by far had the highest out of 41 rich countries, by far the highest suicide rate amongst the 15 to 19-year-old bracket. And I mean, an outlier, stratospheric compared with the other countries. So yeah, it's a real problem, isn't it? And I wouldn't have known anything about it unless I'd come across your music. It doesn't really come up if you read a copy of The Economist. Yes, there's a section on New Zealand. I don't remember ever reading anything about the high rates of suicide, whereas South Korea, with the pressure that's put on students and the culture there where a lot of people in their 80s, I don't know if a lot, but they will commit suicide because they don't want to be a burden on their families. So there are different cultural factors at play, aren't there? But yeah, this is really disturbing, the data in New Zealand. And so what? If the statistics going down, that doesn't mean anything to you, really, do it? It's marginal. That's not going to bring you any comfort, knowing that it's gone down from 17.2 to 16.2. That's just that's just a number, isn't it? There's still lives that have been lost here. So number 4 is this is a song of fortitude, then, isn't it? Rejecting obliteration is finding resilience, surely, isn't it? Is that the message here?
Pretty much. Yeah. Kind of like where some of the tracks are about sort of like maybe giving up. Rejecting obliteration really is kind of the overarching idea, is that like we don't have to give up. We can push through. And yeah, rejecting obliteration itself, like the title track, is that. And like, yeah, musically, I wanted the outro to just be fucking triumphant, and
Yeah.
I love what we ended up doing with this song. We've been playing this one live as well. And yeah, hectic track to play live. A lot of fun. And especially the outro. When we've been playing this one live, in the outro where the guitars like come back down into the clean section, we've had new drummer Anthony Kuda doing a drum solo over that whole section, and it's just been fucking just really sick, really cool. I love it when bands like sort of take a song from their album and then kind of like expand on it in the live setting. So we've been trying to do a little bit of that.
Yeah, this song, I think the intro is like the closest you get to conventional death metal. It just really goes for you. Again, I do hear it's hard to pick out your influences. Well, it's not hard to pick out, but you definitely are not reductive in any way of any band. And I can tell that just from our conversation. I'm going to make a guess that you probably don't even listen to extreme metal when you're writing music, because you probably don't want to be influenced by anything. Is that
that's
correct, anyway?
That's bang on. I guess like the whole idea of Blindfolded has always been like, we don't want to be just another death metal band. We don't want to write albums that other people have already written. We want to make our own mark. We want to have our own sound. But I mean, we've got all of the ingredients there to make just like a straight up death metal band if we wanted to, but I don't think that's really ever what we've wanted to do. It's like, let's do something different, think outside the box. And yeah, I try to not be inspired by other metal bands. I love listening to metal, but I try, like my favorite band of all time is Nile. And Blindfolded doesn't really sound anything like Nile at all, but if I'm listening to Nile, I don't want to go home and write another Nile song. They're doing that good enough. Yeah. And yeah, like the first riff of this song, I was like, what is like the least Blindfolded thing that like we could do? And it's just like, it just sits on like the first fret, and it's just like, whereas like everything else is like all over the show. It's like, that would just be like, what if we just did something like the complete opposite of what we would usually do. So yeah.
How do you, at this stage, I need to ask this because am I right in thinking, have you been playing guitar since around the age 8 or 7 or 8 as a child?
Yeah, I had my parents got me like a nylon string classical when I was 8 or 9. Yeah, maybe 8. And I was just drawn to it immediately. Yeah, always been super passionate about music ever since I was a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean these dissonant guitar chords that you're playing, how much theory are you putting behind them? Because it's clear that you know what you're doing. I mean, you even work in a music shop, you've been playing since the age of 9, but you'd say that it's done in 24 hours and you don't want to overthink it. But you've got to present this then to Ben, haven't you? And he's got to learn how to play this, which can't be easy. So my question is, are you ever consciously thinking, oh, right, okay, there's a clash of notes here in this interval, and I'm going to break it even more and do something that you wouldn't expect? Or do your fingers just go where it sounds unmelodious and dissonant when you're trying to get that effect?
I mean, to be completely honest, I have absolutely zero musical theory behind me. I don't know how to read music. I don't know. I've never had any formal training. I never even. I'm mostly actually self-taught because I fucking hated guitar lessons. I hated going to lessons, and I really didn't like, even from a young age, like I didn't like people telling me like this is how you play music. I feel like music is one of those like very rare things where like it's a weird thing to teach because it's like it's an expression of yourself in such a way. So, well, I mean, that's just the way I look at it. Someone going through like jazz school would be like, dude, that's not it. But yeah, I've always thought it's a strange thing to teach, and I would never be a good student. So I've ended up just figuring a lot of things out for myself. And yeah, when it comes to writing music, it's more about yeah, like finding a way to like express what we want to say like in a musical form. So it's not necessarily like, oh, it's like these things work together or whatnot, because I don't really know if they do or not. Like a music teacher might come along and be like, what are you doing? That is like, you've broken like 10 rules writing this riff. But it's like, man, I don't know. Sick.
How does art progress though? You're right. And often it is the unorthodox, unconventional, avant-garde type music comes from people. I'll give you an example. Trent Reznor, I was watching an analysis on YouTube from this music teacher, and she loves him. She was saying, on that first album, Pretty Hate Machine, there's a song on there, piano driven, and she's saying anyone who had lessons in piano would not do this because they've been taught just a Western music theory. But she's saying this is how we progress, because he's doing things, he kind of knows what he's doing, but he's deliberately subverting the rules. And that's what you're doing with your music. And that's how we progress, isn't it? And that's how now we even have this whole, it's the current sound really in metal, and has been for the last 10 years, you know, that jazz fusion, dissonant type distortion. It's really unusual. And I think there's so much more to go there, but I'm glad that you've balanced it on this album with those bountiful textures as well, because let's go on to track number 5, Wraith. Probably the bravest song on here, because Stace is actually roaring over a clean bass guitar passage. And when I heard that, I remember thinking, whoa, that is a risk. Now, this is a risk, and absolutely superb. You pull it off. Really good bass playing in this. I think looking at my notes as well, the other thing that stands out, again, almost like shoegaze textures. It's like you're daydreaming, and then you're awoken from this abruptly, aren't you, with these like spasms of brutality. This is one of the standout songs for me. Where did this come in the songwriting process? Did you do this at the beginning, or was this one tagged on at the end?
This one would have been more towards the end. And how this song kind of came about musically, we play in like standard G sharp on a 7-string, so we've never played in like drop tuning before. Although it's like dropped a bunch of steps, it's not like that one finger bar chord sort of drop tuning. And I was like, man, I should just try to like write a song in a drop tuning. So like I dropped the top string, which put it down to like F, I think. And this is what came out, and I was like, man, that's pretty cool. Like, we've never done that before. It was actually a bit of a challenge to record because I guess in this tuning, a lot of people would probably use an 8-string, but I mean, we don't have 8 strings. We've just got 7 strings. So the bass in particular was quite hard to record because the top string was just so floppy.
Sounds like
we were struggling to get. Yeah, we had like a good friend of ours, Fudd. He's like a bass guru. Come down to the studio and try to like figure out how we could record this song and try to like touch up Nick's bass a bit so it wasn't so wild. But we got there in the end. And yeah, when you say about the vocals being over that clean section, that was something that we toyed over for quite some time. We actually tried a version of this song where there was no vocals over that part, and personally I did not vibe on that at all. I think we kind of had mixed feelings about how this one was going to pan out with the vocals, but I'm really glad that we went with what we did, because I think it's like an awesome juxtaposition. The like Stace's vocals over that part, it's just like ferocious, and it gives you a chance to sort of hear his voice in like a different context, and I think it's really intense.
Yeah, it's almost existential, isn't it? It's like he is trapped and he's backed away from the microphone, and it's a voice in the distance, isn't it? I think that's what gives it that tragic effect. Like when you listen to that band ISIS, when they, in the early 2000s, they were really pushing it that way as well, weren't they? I think, did they self-righteously call their music thinking man's metal, didn't they? Which they got a bit of flack for. But yeah, it reminded me of that. The track number 6, Cicada. Remember when I reviewed this and I thought, oh, you've given me a gift here? Because I remember writing, this is where you unblindfold the listener and lead them to the meadows. I just had to get in a review. When I read it, I was like, right, that's going into mine. But this is a phenomenal song. And you're really opening up your soundscape here, aren't you, as well? Yeah, I can hear Gorguts in here, and also and you're going to get compared to bands like your label mates, that Swiss avant-garde black metal band Shamash. They have a similar guitar style and tone, don't they, to you? But that part where the listener is transported to the meadows is just abruptly not, it's like you've got a hammer to the kneecaps when they're just about to reach them. What is this one about? Obviously I know what a cicada is. Is there a metaphor here? What's this song about, if you want to share that? Because some of these things you might want to keep to yourself.
This song was kind of about, it was originally called The Cicada Screams from the Mouth of the Bird, which was kind of like a working title, which is kind of where I wanted to go with the lyrics. And I guess it is like a metaphor for like, the cicada is kind of like eaten by the bird, but it's like still alive, and it's like suffering in that moment, and it's trying to escape, and it's trying to like just trying to escape that sort of suffering. And that's pretty much what the song's about, like trying to escape this sort of suffering that we all go through at times. Like the lyric, suffering is an essential cog. It's kind of like, sometimes that's what it feels like, even just getting out of bed in the morning, and having to go to work or whatever, doing things that we all have to do that we don't want to do, or it can be as big as like things like suicide and whatnot. So yeah, musically, probably one of my favorite songs on the album. We've been playing this one live as well in our new set list, and when it drops down into that, like, it's just the clean guitar part live, there's always like a really nice moment of our sets. We've been finding, you know, the whole vibe, just like the whole place just like stops, and then it just comes back in like more ferocious than ever.
Yeah.
So yeah. And there's actually a live drum video of Kuda playing this song in Melbourne, I think. And he's kind of put his own spin on the drums, and in particular, like the outro section, he does this like gravity blast thing, and it's just like, fuck, dude, it's crazy. He's a madman.
Yeah, again, do you know what? So to me, this album, the mood is so original, and especially this song. I'm hearing parts that are almost traumatic, you know, and the violence you're inflicting on the listener. And then there's some really nostalgic moments on here. Do you not think, with the colors, the timbre of the music, you just don't hear that juxtaposition in extreme metal. I think were you consciously aware that you might be doing something outside the normal orthodoxy when you did this, or did it just write itself again like the other songs?
It's not something that I thought about, you know, like when I write music, I don't go into it like, okay, how do I write the most unorthodox thing, or like, I definitely don't come at it from that angle. It's more just like I find a lot of like melody within dissonance. So if I write like a really like dissonant kind of heavy riff, often I'll discover like not too far from that there's something like really beautiful. So that's kind of like where Cicada came from. It was like I was messing around with these riffs, and then I just found this like chord progression that I mean, I don't know chords, you know. So it's like I'm just like putting my fingers in different places on the guitar and finding out sort of where it needs to go next. And yeah, that like clean section there in particular, it was like, oh wow, like that's like, it was like so sort of like angry and like off before, and then it's just not too far from that. It's like super beautiful. So yeah, I definitely don't go into writing music like, right, let's write a groundbreaking album.
Yeah, I think anyone who tries to do that is probably going to fail, because they're probably overthinking it, aren't they, as well? So there's, even though your music is so well calibrated and it's technical, there are elements of spontaneity in here clearly as well, aren't they? And track number 7, to me, why I like this song, it feels like musically a follow-up to Bethlehem. I know it's only 1 minute and 57 seconds.
Yeah,
you've got a lot of these really high velocity tremolo picking. It almost sounds like your strings are going to snap, because it's so violent, isn't it? The guitar picking in certain sections, and the drumming is just fucking out of this world, isn't it, on this song? When your new guy came in, Anthony, he must be intimidated by some of these songs, having to learn them.
I don't think he's intimidated. I think he's like, you know, let's fucking take it even further, which is kind of what we want, you know. Like we didn't really want to get the same drummer again, because it was sort of like an opportunity for change in a way. So yeah, I'm super excited to see what Kuda does, because he's just phenomenal. But yeah, this song, drumming wise, it's pretty out the gate. It's, yeah, and I mean, it's so short, but it's almost like when you listen to the album as a whole and it comes out of Cicada and it just sort of like builds into that big noisy sort of section, and then it just drops straight into this, it's almost like a relief, you know, even though this song is so violent.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, there's certain sections on this album, and Stace deserves a lot of credit here. he's adding his voice almost like a percussive instrument in certain sections, isn't it? It's like almost just staccato where the bass player, the two guitarists, you and Ben, and then the drummer, and he just joins in as well, doesn't it? I think that's what makes it even heavier when you listen to it.
I've always thought that about like death metal vocals. They can be so percussive, and you know, when you hear people who don't listen to metal and they're like, oh, I can't understand a word he's saying, but it's like, neither can I a lot of the time. But like, listen to how sick it is, like that, like choppy sort of thing. Like, I've always been a massive fan of like Cannibal Corpse and stuff like that, because exactly that like percussive, just sort of primal. Yeah, I think like lyrically, this song, I wrote the lyrics to this song not long after actually being at a funeral, and just kind of like, you know, funerals are like strange things to be at because there's so many emotions. But one thing that I was noticing is like how people smile at each other at funerals, and it's like that in itself is like a strange juxtaposition, you know, like you at a funeral, you see someone you know, you see someone you love, and you still like smile at them, even though you're at like the most devastating thing that you could be at. So yeah, funeral smiles.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I lost my father in February, unexpectedly.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thanks, man. And you know what you said is true, though. I thought I'm gonna fall apart when I see the hearse turn up at the church, but because family I haven't seen for a decade, some of them, I found myself having a really vibrant chat with him, and he's behind me in the car in the hearse, and it just took my mind off it. You're right. That was such a well, you're just not prepared, are you, for something like that? But yeah, no, you're right, and you know, definitely connected with me. And am I right in thinking the waves as well? This again has some serene moments, but the beginning is like a cross between hardcore and tech death, isn't it? As well, again, it's just these juxtapositions. There's still at no point are they predictable though, because you just don't know what it's going to sound like.
So the waves, yeah, that song took like a bit of figuring out in the studio as well, because the clean section in that part originally had like a completely different drum beat and stuff to what we ended up recording. So it was one of those songs, like I think we sort of like fought with this one a little bit to get it to where it was. But it was actually one of our favorite songs to play in the band room, like preparing for recording this. The outro riff in particular is like super fun to play as a band. But yeah, the little clean part, actually Ben, our other guitarist, is really good at like taking these clean sections and expanding on them. So that's always been like a really cool collaborative thing that he does. So yeah, he had a lot of input into that part. But yeah, the whole intro section of the song as well is like, it's kind of hard to like tell in the recording, but the way the guitars are doing something completely different. Yeah, maybe one day I'll do like a video of what the two different guitars are actually doing, because it's quite a cool little different thing that they're doing, and it together it sounds almost like one guitar is sort of doing everything, but it's two guitars sort of working together to make this strange sort of thing. So
yeah, I think that's another it's another standout song for me. Track number 8, The Waves.
Awesome.
Number 9, Hands of Contrition.
Yeah.
First thing I put here: how do they execute the arpeggio-led death metal assault? The secret is the drums. Oh, I've kind of asked myself a question when I'm listening to this and answered it. The violent hiss of the vocals, awesome passage of down picking, melody and dissonance with surprising ease, the way that you mix that. I think that is the sound, isn't it, of Blindfolded and Led to the Woods on this album. That you said, so where does melody begin? Where does dissonance end? Vice versa. You're really obscuring the two, aren't you, on this? Yeah, I think there's a good reset in this as well, isn't there, to a calm moment. You know, like we were talking about Billy Corgan and the Smashing Pumpkins. first time I ever heard a real reset was that song Geek USA on Siamese Dream, where it just cuts out, doesn't it, and goes into this really beautiful, almost like, I guess it is a bit like a Pink Floyd type melody, and then it goes back into that solo. And I remember buying the tab book for that as a kid, and he called it a reset, that part of the song. So I use that term now because of Billy Corgan. And yeah, you do something similar in this song, don't you, as well, where the whole band just stop what they're doing and the guitar just meanders just for a bit, doesn't it, just to refuel.
Yeah. I've always sort of looked at this song as it's sort of split up into like 3 sections, and you can kind of see that when you look at the vocals, it's sort of like 3 paragraphs, and that's kind of how it ended up turning out. Like, because Stace wrote the lyrics for this song, so musically, like when Stace writes a song lyrically, then we sort of have to pair it to the music somehow, which is always something really fun that Stace and I do together. So he'll often have like ideas of where things should go, and I might have some ideas of where things should go, and between us we'll kind of figure out the phrasing and whatnot. So we do all that in like pre-pro, but then often when we come to record the album, it might change again. So but yeah, this song ended up being sort of like 3 paragraphs, and then the music itself almost has like 3 sections. And yeah, like you say, that like little reset part, yeah, kind of like a weird dissonant sort of thing. But then the riff that goes into after that, like really simple, but I think quite effective. And then into like a weird guitar solo over top, which like I definitely don't consider myself like a lead guitarist. Like I've never been like a solo guy. I just like riffing. But there are more solos on this album than we've ever had before, which was like most of them we figured out in the studio. Like I kind of had ideas, but this is another solo where it's completely different to what I wrote. It's absolutely, there's almost not a single same note in there to what I wrote. So yeah, we definitely chopped and changed things when recording.
Yeah, you're right. The solos on this are very colourful, aren't they? And well thought out. It's not just mindless shredding, is it? Which you do hear quite a lot in metal. It's impressive, but at the same time, you hear one song of Sweet Picking, and then if they do it on every song, it just loses impact. Whereas, yeah, you really put them in at the right moments. They're there to serve the song, aren't they? Rather than the other way around. Tasteful.
I think so. I think it can be hard for bands that are like super tech. Like if every song has a guitar solo, like, man, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. And some bands do it absolutely flawlessly, like the likes of like Necrophagist, Obscura, even Nile. Like they just shred these insane solos, and it's like, man, how can you write so much guitar solos?
Yeah, definitely. You're right. When you see those live performances, Necrophagist, Mohammed, when he live, you're just like, fucking hell. And he's spot on, isn't he, every time as well? He just makes it so easy.
Yeah, he's one of those like blips on the map, and he just existed for a short time and just was picture perfect and then disappeared.
Yeah, we don't even know if he likes heavy music these days. So he has just disappeared.
Who knows, man?
part of the legend, isn't it? Yeah. So let's move on to the final track. Now, I know that this is already a fan favorite. I've heard this come up quite a lot. Track number 10, Caustic Burn, 7 minutes as well. So definitely in the realms of progressive death metal, I would say, with this song. Do you want to just talk us through this? What you were trying to achieve, what you had in mind? Did it come out the way you expected?
So yeah, this would be one of our band favorites as well. Like we play this at the end of all our sets now, because it's just like finishing our set and then it winding down and the music stops and it's just Stace doing a cappella vocals live is freaking intense.
Yeah.
And yeah, so this, I think was actually the last song that I wrote for the album. And I almost wanted to do a similar thing to what happened on Nightmare with Jules, where the album finished on just like a really epic closer. So Nightmare with Jules finishes with the Sic Mundus Creatus Est song. And I kind of wanted to do like it's not like a follow-up to that, but it's the same sort of idea. Like I wanted to finish it with something epic. And this, because it ended up being one of our favorite songs, we were like, fuck, we have to release this as a single because we like want people to hear it. And it's the last song on the album. And like, if you just look at any bands like Spotify or their music things, like there's way more listens to like the first 4 or 5 songs, and then they just get like lower and lower by the end of the album. You know, people aren't really listening to whole albums. Well, they should be, in my opinion, but I guess just the way it is. So we were like, let's just put it out as a single, because then people have heard the last song on the album. Hopefully they'll listen to the rest of it. And we'll do a video clip for it and all that sort of stuff. So yeah. Yeah. This is a track where like I'm quite stoked with how this one turned out. I really like the little clean section. Like I don't even know how I came up with that. I don't remember doing it. But yeah, this is one of those songs that, again, it kind of like wrote itself, I guess, in some way. When I'm writing music, maybe you end up in a little bit of almost like a trance-like state where you're just like, things are just like snowballing. And yeah. Caustic Burns.
Sounds like you're proud of this, perhaps more than most songs as well. It really does, like you said, touch a nerve with a band. What is there shouting at the end, screaming at the end? That a cappella, is it exhale? And then what does he say there? I was trying to figure it out the first one because it's still so aggressive, isn't it?
It's
what the lyric that it ends on?
I inhale you deeply and hold my breath. So this is lyrically a song that Stace wrote. That's again, it'd be an awesome one to talk to him about because it's like a whole sort of story that he came up with. And yeah, really, really great lyrics. I love Stace's lyrics. I love it when he writes a song.
What a way to end the album. You're right. And to me, the colors on this album, the artwork is fantastic as well. Your favorite artist, obviously, is it Eli Cantor? Is he the guy who did I know he did the artwork for that Psychroptic album last year, and he's obviously done so many, hasn't he?
Yeah, the cover that I saw that he did that really struck me was the Venom Prison one, where it's kind of like the sort of bodies are like piled up, but there's that one person who's like got their eyes open and they're sort of looking like they're looking fucking directly at you. And I'm like, God damn, that's such a powerful piece. Like, how do you paint that? That dude he's so talented. It's insane. And
that I think Blindfolded and Led to the Woods, now synonymous with his artwork, that you just have to use him every time, don't you? The fans would be devastated if you changed the aesthetic of it now.
Oh, I would love to work with him again. I mean, I love the way when you open the CD and it all just becomes like one sort of like infinite loop. I think that's an amazing idea. And that was one of those things that like Prosthetic helped us with so much. We wanted to work with him, but it's hard in the music industry these days. Like, I mean, imagine how many bands email him a day asking, hey, can you do an album cover for us? So luckily we had some Prosthetic had a bit of like contact with him in the past, like I guess with Psychroptic and other bands I've worked with. So they put us in contact and we worked through it, which was just so cool. It's like having those sort of opportunities now with Prosthetic is something that we've never had before. Like Nightmare with Jules, up till then, everything we'd done was completely independent. Nightmare with Jules was completely independent. So we were completely on our own for like everything up until now. And which I think is a really good thing because we learned so much. We made heaps of mistakes along the way. And now that we have kind of a label behind us, we're still working as harder than we ever have, but we've got a team behind us as well. So yeah, every little bit helps these days. It's hard to break through. There's a lot of noise.
Yeah, do you know that when I saw that you'd signed to Prosthetic, I remember celebrating myself. It's like, yes, one of these bands that I've discovered who are independent have been signed in Prosthetic, along with Season of Mist, and you could even say Napalm Records. Obviously, you've got Nuclear Blast. They are, to me, in the underground, Prosthetic are the torchbearers, aren't they, for quality extreme metal? I mean, that English band, Pupil Slicer, for example, fuck me. I mean, have you heard their new album? That is just incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I genuinely hope one day we can tour with them. Like, I hope we can make that happen. That would just be so sick.
Yeah, that's it. They're from, I think they're based in London at the moment. The town I live in at the moment, they've played here a few times at a pub, when they were unsigned. So I was aware of them at the time, but they've just, I mean, their album's called Blossom. They've just blossomed, haven't they? Like you guys. And I'm going to end it here by saying I think the month of May was superb for heavy music. And I remember when I heard that Cattle Decapitation, I was like, okay, that's it, death metal album of the year. And then yours came out the week later. It's like, we've got 2 in 1 month, so phenomenal achievement. And I'm just going to end it here. Describe the feeling when you got the album, the CD, bears the imprint of Prosthetic Records, you open the booklet. Surely that's what you've wanted all your life. What was that like, that moment?
Well, I mean, it's a cliche, but it really is a dream come true. Like, we've been working at this for a long time now. We've been a band for like 13 years. We've had not too many lineup changes, but over those 13 years, we've definitely faced all sorts of challenges. Living in New Zealand is a big challenge in itself. We're so far away from anywhere in the rest of the world, so I feel like we have to work really hard to get our music in front of people in other parts of the world, So to finally kind of, be signed to someone like Prosthetic Records, which is kind of like a dream label, it's like one of those labels that it's like, oh, that would be awesome, but maybe it's just a pipe dream. But then it actually happens and you're kind of just like, what the hell? Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot. This has been an emotional journey, an emotional roller coaster, this whole album, like from writing it to releasing it. We've all had all sorts of challenges in our life outside of music as well. So yeah, it's been cathartic. And now that this album's out there, I feel like this was such an emotional album. I think the next one is just going to be fuck you brutal.
I think you've written your masterpiece here. If you never wrote anything again, or if the band split up tomorrow, which clearly won't happen, I think you could be proud and say, you know what, we did achieve the full potential. I think this is the album. I don't want to put pressure on you for the next one. I don't want that to be a downer, but I think you can be proud. This is the pinnacle, in my opinion.
Well,
I don't know what was going to come next, but this is really top draw music.
I reckon we've got a few cards up our sleeve. And the next one, it's well underway. So yeah, without saying too much, I'm freaking excited. I'm really excited for the next one. I mean, we're just going to keep pushing and we're just going to keep going and we're going to try to get our stuff out there without it taking too long. This album we had out there within like 2 years. I would love to see us do that again. So yeah, hopefully we get to play some shows overseas. we would love to come to your part of the world. We would love to go to the States, Asia, wherever. We want to go wherever. Like anyone that wants to book us, we're coming.
You need to come to England, definitely. I'll be
absolutely.
People Slicer, Blindfolded and Led to the Woods. Shamash, that band from Switzerland. Wouldn't it be great if there was a prosthetic road show and just go around the world and these great bands?
And yeah, like Psychroptic as well on there. Like
yeah,
I think that's a great idea. Prosthetic festival.
I'd be there. I'd be covering it, definitely.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for joining us, and it's been an absolute pleasure to do an analysis of the album. And I just hope that I've done your fans proud, myself being one of them as well. So yeah, thanks very much, Stu. And
thank you so much, man. Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
We'll be speaking in 2 years, it sounds like, when the third classic in a row comes out.
Yeah, hopefully. Awesome, man.
Thanks.